Yes, it's another film video, but this time with a bonus. A full tour of my darkroom and a walkthrough of my custom ESP32 base development timer. If you're into DIY, analog photography, or just love nerding out over clever builds, this one's for you. Learn how I built this setup and how I use my darkroom today, right here on John Builds Things. My first darkroom was a dusty, cramped utility closet in our first townhouse. I constantly battled grime on my negatives and prints, and the only running water was a dingy laundry sink stuck behind the HVAC stack. Totally impractical. So when we moved to our new house, I wanted to do a proper darkroom, and our basement had a 5x5 closet with only a waste pump in it. The problem? 5x5 wasn't enough, so I negotiated a little expansion. I convinced my wife to let me take 5 more feet from the adjacent room. We gained an extra closet, and I got my 5x10 darkroom. I framed the walls, drywalled, mudded, and painted. And let me say this now, drywalling is something I will absolutely hire out next time. Never again. But I love the result. 5x5 dry side, 5x5 wet side. Everything I need, nothing I don't. Let's start with the dry side. It's wired for 5 and 12 volt power to run lights, a fan, and both of my custom timers. The counter includes a built-in light table, almost full width, so I can spread out negatives and preview what I want to print. Below, I've got drawers full of resin-coated multigrade paper and a light-tight paper box for open sleeves of paper. The enlarger is a Beseler 23C. I originally started with an Omega B22, but I shoot a lot of 6x9 and it couldn't handle that format. I also printed custom trays and filter caddies for my Ilford filter set. I'll link the STLs in the description. To control the enlarger, I use a custom f-stop timer. Like the subject of today's video, this is another ESP32 project that I've previously documented in a video. Unlike the development timer, this device has a multitude of tactile input controls that allow me to tweak focus, test strip printing, and final printing in the dark. For ventilation, I've got passive vents built into the wall connecting to the next room to bring in fresh room temperature air. And on the wet side, I use a marine grade fan to actively exhaust fumes outside. The fan is rated for 12 volts, but I run it at 5 to be a little quieter. Someday I'll continue the ventilation duct across my sink to do proper fume extraction. Up high on a shelf, out of kid reach, is all my chemistry and development tanks. The shelving makes it easy for everything to drip dry back into the sink. On a lower, but still sufficiently high shelf, I also have 2 large water dispensing jugs filled with premixed Eco Pro Stop Bath and Fixer, for quick access when I'm printing black and white film and prints. Speaking of the sink, that's custom too. It's a 2x5 sheet of plywood with 1x4 sides, all covered in about a 1/4 inch of epoxy. It's fully waterproof. The sink drains into a waste ejector pump, and it's got a cold water line hooked up with a hose bib. Connected to that bib is a short rubber hose that handles rinsing. I printed adapters to connect that hose directly to my tanks. Those STL files are linked as well. Over the past 2.5 years, I've continually refined this darkroom to fit my needs. Because of that, it might not ever be done, but I love using it, I love improving it, and lately I'm loving sharing it here more. This isn't my first attempt at a film timer. I've been playing with different versions for years, but I think this one's the keeper. The goals were simple. Keep it flush to the wall, make it remote control via a web interface, no hardware controls. Foot switch operation, no wet fingers on electronics. I wanted presets for common films and developers. I wanted a loud buzzer to let me know when it was time to change chemicals. And I wanted a big darkroom safe display for ease of use. It's built with an Adafruit 7-segment display and backpack. It's all powered by a tiny Pico ESP32 board. It uses a MOSFET to switch on the buzzer. And it just has 2 jacks, one for power and one for the foot switch, represented here as a push button. The design is clean and simple. I modeled it in Fusion and printed it on my Ender 3 S1 Pro. Because of the limited inputs on the timer, modeling an enclosure was straightforward. The foot switch is just a model from printables. I'll link that too. More on that foot switch in a minute. The design of the foot switch is clever. It uses a binder clip as a spring, but after testing, I might need to modify the hinge a bit to make it more durable. The hinge, while clever, doesn't seem to hold up to the resistance of the binder clip, and so every now and then when I push the pedal down, the hinge gives way. Also, sometimes I jam my foot down because I'm just in a hurry, and the pedal locks in the down position, sending the timer into a loop. I didn't design a PCB for this project. I'm just using a proto board and some soldering. For my past few projects, I did go to the work of designing a custom PCB and having it print it, because there were just enough connections that made doing of just a proto board a risky choice. However, because we're dealing with limited I/O, just proto boards seemed fine. If there's enough interest, I might design a PCB for it. I've gotten a few comments and DMs asking about kits since my last timer build. It was really flattering to see members of this community reach out, because I see so many cool photography projects on this platform and others that impress the heck out of me. It's a cool trend to see photographers and engineers making their own darkroom tools, and it really speaks to how particularly the film photography community has evolved since its renaissance to adopt a lot of these DIY and maker community practices. I don't have formal electronics or industrial design training, so I hesitate to sell anything commercially, but maybe I'll set up a Tindy store or something to distribute these film tools. Let me know in the comments if that's something you'd be interested in or collaborating on with. Finally, the foot switch plugs into a 3.5mm mono jack, and the power switch goes into a 5.5 barrel connector. Pretty standard. As I said, this timer is an iteration, and so I already had a spot on my wall ready to accept the hardware. I just needed to run new level line and punch out anchors to attach it. This is so light that simple screw anchors are more than enough to hold it. Eventually, I'd love to actually pull out a lot of the shelving and such, and give this room a fresh coat of paint and put down some workshop flooring, hide all the wires, and make it a really sharp space. That's a big task, and it would leave my darkroom in an unusable state for probably more than one weekend at the rate it takes me to finish home projects these days. I tend to run several projects concurrently, much to the chagrin of my family. Threading the foot switch cable behind the sink was a tricky part, but with a little off-camera shimmying and elbow grease, it went through. That was an oversight when I first designed this room. Again, things I would do differently if I had the opportunity. Power for the timer runs through conduit to the dry side, where I connect it into the 5-volt bus, and it's controlled with a rocker switch. The whole setup is clean, simple, and reliable. It gets out of my way so I can focus on the pictures. Let's go over how I use it. Different films and developers require specific times and temperatures. I loaded all that data into a big JSON file that the web app reads and provides a series of menus for me to narrow down my selection. In this demo, I'm running 2 rolls of color negative film. For example, Cinestill's C41 kit recommends slightly more time with each reuse. That's easy to accommodate in this app with the custom tab, where I can manually enter in my desired times. The timer steps through dev, stop, and fix, or dev and blix depending upon what you're doing, and I just use the foot switch to trigger each new timer, and a short buzzer lets me know when it time's up and time to change chemicals. I think the value and utility of this is clear. I can focus on the development process directly and avoid fumbling around with timers or having to remember start-stop times from a clock. I remember learning film development back in college, which was longer ago than I'd like to admit. And all we had were shared wall clocks, one above the film development sink and one in the darkroom. You just had to be really attentive and not lose your place. Honestly, that was an achievement for any college student. When the clock finishes the cycle, it resets, so if I'm doing another roll or another print, I just hit the foot switch again. For paper development, it's even easier. I built the timer to default to a set of timers at 2 minutes, 30 seconds, and 5 minutes for dev, stop, and fix, which is what I prefer for black and white development, the bulk of my work. Of course, I can always load those times up or tweak them using the custom functionality in the web app if I change my mind. I've been using this version of the timer for about 6 months, and I find that it just works. The best kind of DIY tool is the one you don't think about while using, and that's what I've got here. Other than tweaking the foot switch hinge, I wouldn't change a thing. Thanks for everyone who encouraged me to share this after the print timer video. I hope this helps people even more. If you enjoyed this build, hit like, subscribe, and stick around. Leave a comment if you'd like more film photography projects, if you'd like to collaborate on any of these projects, or would be interested in distributed kits. I've got plenty more ideas and projects on the horizon, so let me know. Thanks again, and see you next time on John Builds Things.